Hello, my name is Tabea Wille. I'm Associate Professor at the Department of Computer Science and Information Systems at the University of Limerick in Ireland. Today I am presenting on behalf of the keyboards team at Translation Commons, of which I'm also a member, and the topic of the presentation is developing keyboards for digitally marginalized languages.
The Keyboards initiative at Translation Commons has three main goals. We want to develop keyboards for as many languages as possible, we enable others to develop keyboards, and we enable others to train keyboard developers. We do this apart from actually making keyboards by working on processes for keyboard development and working on training material and delivering such training material. We have a number of members from different roles and backgrounds, which are also holding different roles within the team.
In this presentation, I will first talk about what digitally marginalized languages are and what language digitization is, then about how we create keyboards just on a high level, and then a little bit about the progress to date, both globally and within our group.
So what do we mean with the term digital marginalization? As you most likely know, digital technology started out as being very Anglo-centric, which was due to the fact that a lot of this technology actually got initially conceived and developed in English-speaking environments. And then over the decades, a lot more languages were included, which is why we now have many of the world languages being basically as functional as English. So there would be keyboards for German and very flourishing internet life for French, and machine translation between English and Spanish and so on. However, the languages we are interested in when we talk about digital marginalization are those that are still not at all or insufficiently supported. So that can mean that there is maybe no keyboard available for the language, or the language writing system isn't actually encoded in Unicode yet, or more advanced things are not available, such as predictive text. And then, of course, to what extent is it possible to find information in that language anywhere, and so on and so forth. So when a language is digitally marginalized, this is not necessarily a small language, this is not necessarily a minority language. This happens to also major languages in the world that have millions and millions of speakers. But the result of this would be that it is very difficult for speakers of those languages to access information and perspectives. And that can be, that they don't have access to local information or more global and general information. So what we know to be possible with learning things on the internet and finding out would be very limited to digitally marginalized speakers. Then also the ability to share information and perspectives, so they might not be able to share information within the language community. And we also don't have access to their perspectives because they can't share their perspective online, and we have, if they did, we would have no way of actually understanding it because there's no translation available, for example. The ability to communicate with other speakers of the language. So if you think about how much communicating you do on your phone with a messaging app, for example, this is very difficult if a language isn't fully able to be written in, for example, or if there is no predictive text for more advanced systems and so on. And then what we also need to consider is that when people have additional needs, then when a language isn't properly digitized, then accessibility can suffer for them. So this could mean, for example, that a person who needs a screen reader would find it very difficult to read a website with a screen reader if the website doesn't actually have the text typed out there, but has embedded images, because the person creating the website was worried about the text being displayed properly on all different types of browsers and all different configurations. So there is an additional intersectional aspect to digital marginalization when it comes to any sort of additional needs that people might have.
Language digitization on the whole is a multi-step process that enables languages to be present in the digital space. And because it includes so many steps, such as initial font design of a language, and then encoding of the characters in Unicode, developing keyboards at a later stage, then including the language in the common locale data repository with a number of additional information points that are important to know about a particular language or region, but also predictive text or any sort of language processing databases and models. So you can imagine that because it involves so many steps and because there are so many specialized skills required, there are many different groups and individuals that are involved in this globally. And also everyone looking at it from different perspectives and with different activities. So within our group, we are focusing primarily on the keyboard development itself and a little bit on predictive text for the keyboard development. While many languages have a primary oral tradition, for those languages that do have a script, the ability to enter text into the digital sphere in the widest sense is an important step in addition to oral recordings. This can help support maintaining of heritage, the capturing of history, traditions, rituals, and lore, and communicating across the diaspora, connecting within the community. So that has implications for language preservation, but also for information sharing, information being shared within the language community, but also with other language communities by translation, for example, expanding of teaching, the learning and usage of the language, linguistic analysis, translation and dictionaries, which I've already mentioned. So by utilizing digital technology, teaching and learning, but also translation and linguistic analysis can be aided, and then enable the sharing of the culture to the world and general representation and self-determination. All of these are examples of where keyboards would be an important step in the language digitization continuum. When it comes to creating a new keyboard for our group in Translation Commons, then we only develop keyboards that have some sort of stakeholder reaching out to us. So that would be the community, or that would be a representative for the community. And we have a website, and they would generally contact us through there, but also through other channels. We then do some research work, we collaborate with the community, and we validate our outputs. So both our design, but also our requirements that we are generating. So what we are interested in is this a new language that doesn't have a keyboard developed at all, or is there already a existing keyboard? So maybe we are looking at a different writing system. So some languages have, maybe they're written in Arabic, but also in Latin script or similar. We look at similar or related languages. There are many languages in the world that actually use the same set of characters, and it is interesting to see whether it's possible to reuse any of the design there. We want to know whether there is an existing keyboard for that particular language and that writing system, and if we're being asked to create a new keyboard or modify one, what are the issues with the existing keyboard. Then we have a round of identification of character sets. So of course the language, letters themselves, but also numbers, punctuation, diacritics, tone marks, symbols, and so on. And we also want to understand the usage of the language. So for example, are the tone marks and diacritics, which letters are they actually being used with, and so on. Then we want to know what is the level of digitalization for the language. So what are the existing, what language codes are there? Sometimes there are different language codes like ISO codes that apply to different countries or regions. Script code is the language, or the script rather, is it encoded in Unicode? Is there a font? This can be especially interesting for mobile, for example, whether we don't necessarily know whether, we need to find out whether if we create a keyboard then there is a font that actually would support that. And what are existing keyboard and writing practices that we would be aiming to align with, rather than doing something completely new, unless that is of course what we are being asked to do. On the whole, we set out to represent the language in text through keyboards. So we want all the characters to be present, and that needs to be consistent with the orthography, the way that the language is being taught. The technology experience of the community, that can also be interesting. For example, what would be the dominant language in the area? So if the country would be historically French speaking as a colonial language, it might be interesting to see, okay, do we want to base the keyboard on a French layout, or if it would be historically English, do we want to base it on English or similar? What is currently available in terms of technology? What are the standards that we want to be compliant with? How are we going to ensure that the user will be both physically comfortable when typing for long periods, but that it also will be efficient to generate text? There are many different groups and platforms involved in creating keyboards, and collectively there has been a good amount of progress. However, even when we look at the very, very strongly supported countries, based on an analysis that we did of the top 10 supported countries on Keyman desktop and mobile, Microsoft desktop and the mobile platforms, and Google desktop and mobile, we see that even a strongly supported country such as Cameroon is actually only partially supported through keyboards on any of the platforms. As an example, Keyman desktop has 170 languages in Cameroon, but there are 260 living languages. This gets even more pronounced in a country such as India, and then on the even more extreme in countries such as Russia, Ghana, Nepal, where there is many languages still completely unsupported through keyboards. Of course, there are some methodological question marks for some of these things, because countries might have very small languages that are not even written languages, or there might also be considerations around languages that get spoken in different countries and so on. But on the whole, when we look at the countries of the world and the languages of the world that do have keyboard support, we can quite confidently state that there is still a lot of work to do. In terms of progress from within our project, on this slide you can see the languages where members of our group have created keyboards, and all of these we have worked with the communities directly. As you can see, it's just a small number of keyboards really so far, but we are working a lot on training material and also spreading the word to get more developers on board to actually increase the number of keyboards that we can actually develop and teach others to develop.
If this presentation has piqued your interest, we would love for you to get involved. Maybe you want a keyboard developed yourself, or you know of a language community who would like a keyboard developed, and maybe you also want to start developing keyboards yourself. In this case, you would be very welcome to join our group of volunteers. Maybe you would like to be a trainer that teaches others how to make keyboards. Whatever it is that you're interested in, we would be really delighted to hear from you. Thank you very much for your attention.